Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs.
それにしてもデスク、本気で心配してましたよ。6月のひなみ沢に行くなんて正気の沙汰じゃないって。それなのに何度止められても荒川さんどうしても行くって言って聞かなかったそうじゃないですか。どうしてこの時期にひなみ沢に行こうと考えたんです？
明確な理由ってのはないけど、どうしても行きたくなったっていうか、ひなみ沢に呼ばれたってのは変かな。
ひなみ沢に呼ばれた？
ああ、虫の知らせっていうか、記者の勘ってやつかな。この時期には何か面白そうなネタが転がってるんじゃないかってね。
I was half serious, but the rest was just smoke and mirrors. Although, it would be a long story to explain everything that brought me here.
ようやくひなみ沢に入ったみたいですね。
そうだね。ようやくだな。
Sorimachi-sen had a serious look on her face as she clung to the steering wheel. There were no streetlights in the vicinity, so the surrounding area was engulfed in a dismal atmosphere. The low hum of the engine and the sound of raindrops striking the windshield had me feeling uneasy.
ちなみに、ひなみ沢は初めて？
ええ、実際に足を踏み入れるのは。大まかな道は地図で叩き込んできたつもりですけど、配送だからあんまりはっきりと書かれてなかったもので。荒川さんはどうですか？
俺だってそんなに詳しい方じゃないよ。
あれ？だってこの前週刊セブンでその記事を書いたばっかりじゃないんですか？
いや、こないだの記事で使ったのは全部村が閉鎖される前の写真なんだ。俺も来るのは初めてだよ。
なんだ、そうだったんですか。
肉体は死んでも生きている時の念ってのはこの世に残ると思うんだ。まあ思い残すことが何もなく言った人は念なんて残してないと思うけど、そんな奴はめったにいない。そしてそこに含まれる感情は怒り、悲しみ、恨み、憎しみ、人間の負の感情である場合がほとんどだ。
なるほど。未練のある、そして負の感情を持つ人だけが霊となってこの世に残るってことですか？
そうだ。少なくとも俺はそう思ってる。肉体は死んでも念は残る。そんでもって時々人の姿を借りて心残りの念を成就させるために姿を現したりするんだよ。恨んで死んだ奴はその恨みを晴らすためにね。この村はガス災害で大勢の人がある日突然に命を奪われた。死んだ人間の無念がそれこそあちこちに漂っててもおかしくない。てか絶対死んでも死にきれない霊たちがたくさんいると思う。
I was contacted by people claiming to be my grandparents. I was born and raised in a family without a father. I never knew the identity of my father, or any of my parental relatives for that matter. Apparently, my father died in an accident 8 years ago, and my grandparents only learned of my existence after looking through some of the belongings he left behind. They contacted me and offered to show me my father's belongings, including 2 tapes and dozens of diaries. Based on the contents of the diaries, I learned my father was a reporter for a weekly photo magazine. As fate would have it, he and I were working the exact same career. According to his diary, after the Great Hinamizawa disaster, my father started visiting hospitals across the prefecture on a daily basis to listen to the stories of survivors and other people involved. Some massive, enigmatic power must be lurking in that village. A magical power capable of dragging the living to the land of the dead. That was what my father wrote in his diary at the time.
どうしたんですか？
この村、もしかして誰か 住んでるのかな。
まさか、どうして。
今明かりがついたみたいなんだけど。
Yuki-chan's face quickly grew tense. The exceptionally sharp gaze in her eyes made me flinch.
どこですか。
いや、もう消えた。すぐに消えたんだ。
Miyuki-chan stared intently in the direction of the village. But the only thing standing before our eyes was a village bathed in darkness. The passing rain began to build in intensity, causing this village devoid of streetlights to grow even darker.
俺の気のせいだったのかもな。こんな廃村誰もいやしねえよ。つうかいるわけねえよな。みゆきちゃん。
I called out to her again, but Miyuki-chan kept her foot on the brake with a nervous look on her face.
車が。
A car?
車？
She quietly nodded, then pointed out front. A mid-sized car was parked right in front of us. Even in the rain and without any moonlight, the car's body shined against the darkness. I took off my seatbelt and stepped out of the car. Yuki-chan left the car idling and followed my lead.
なんでこんなところに。
この村の住人のものってわけじゃなさそうだな。車体が今風だし。どっから来たんだろう。てかナンバープレートがご丁寧に外してあるじゃん。
I got a bad feeling about this. Nothing good can come from someone like that. I found Miyuki-chan standing behind me, looking surprised. Where'd you go?
どうしたんですか。
なんだ、みゆきちゃんか。どうしたのってこっちが聞きたいよ。みゆきちゃんこそどこ行ってたの。
Miyuki-chan ignored my question, and instead reached for the woman with her eyes closed, and grabbed her by the wrist to check for a pulse.
手遅れか。
And so, I sighed. From the start, there was no need to check for a pulse. It seemed self-evident. After all, they showed no signs of breathing. I knew from the moment I opened the door and caught a whiff of that stagnant air.
残念ですね。
こんなに綺麗な顔してんのになんで死んでんだよ。
一酸化炭素のせいですよ。血中のヘモグロビンと結びつくと一時的に血色が良くなったように見えることがあるんです。
The cold, dispassionate tone in her voice took me by surprise.
参ったな。こういう時ってどうすりゃいいんだよ。
そうですね。
Though I was feeling irritated, Miyuki-chan, on the other hand, didn't seem to be panicking at all. People are dead. How can she be so calm about it?
みゆきちゃん。
龍之介さん、村の集会所に行ってみませんか。
集会所？
そこならまだ電話生きてるかもしれません。
場所わかるのか。
こっちです。
集会所って遠いの？
確か古出神社の境内にあったはずだから、ここからすぐ近くだったと思います。この道は神社の参道に続いていますから、このまままっすぐ一本道ですよ。
That's odd. How would Miyuki-chan know the precise location of a local assembly hall? Good question. And more importantly, what are the chances we'd find a working phone inside a village abandoned for over 20 years? Miyuki-chan claimed she'd never been to Hinamizawa before, and yet she's navigating the forks and bends of the road without even a moment of hesitation. It's as if she knows all the roads in this village by heart.
なあ、みゆきちゃんはさ、本当にこの村来るの初めて？
そうですよ。
いや、なんとなく。
I felt a slight pain in my chest. I suddenly stole a quick glance at Miyuki-chan's expression. However, I failed to discern anything from the calm look on her face. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. So, mere minutes after setting foot into town, we're already coming across signs of strange activity going around, and even stranger groups of people that are apparently trying to remain hidden. And on top of that, our companion, Miyuki, based on some evidence we've already uncovered, seems to be here with an agenda of her own that's separate from ours. I don't think it's anything nefarious. I think she's here to do her own separate investigation into probably the Great Hinamizawa disaster itself. That'd be my guess, personally. Although, why she's being so secretive of her reason for coming here from us, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll get an explanation for that sooner or later. Although, I will get concerned if she does make a bit of a habit of disappearing on us when it's most inconvenient to do so. So, we're heading to the town, the shrine, if I remember right, or where the town hall is located, which should be in the same general vicinity. Let's see what we find there. After walking down the heavily forested road for a while, Miyuki-chan suddenly came to a halt.
どうしたの?
She remained silent and answered my question by pointing forward. Ooh, another one. A single car was parked at the base of the stone steps leading up to the shrine. The car didn't look local. The license plate had the name Nerima on it. So the car probably belonged to someone who came here from that part of Tokyo. Or is it pronounced Nerima?
なんだよ。まさか、また。
I started to wonder if we'd find another body inside. But I kept those thoughts to myself. I feared that speaking those words would cause it to become reality.
ちょっと見てきます。
あ、俺も行くよ。
For a moment, the faces of those people quickly flashed through my mind. Those three peaceful-looking men and women who passed away in their sleep.
ああいうのを見るのは二度とごめんだ。
I said a silent prayer before cautiously peering inside the parked car. Please, let there be no corpses inside. I pointed my flashlight inside, but nobody was in there.
よかったな。誰もいなくて。
おかしいですね。誰？
Though I was smiling to myself, Miyuki-chan turned to me with a stern look on her face. Then I pointed my light all around the car, and even underneath. But there were no signs of human presence.
なあ、みゆきちゃん。誰も乗ってないのがなんでおかしいんだ。
この車、今日ここへ来たばかりって感じです。だったら乗っていた人はどこに行ったんでしょう。
あ、
車輪の跡もほら。
On Miyuki-chan's suggestion, I turned my flashlight towards the ground. Indeed, the fresh-looking tracks along the muddy ground led straight to the tires. The rain began in the evening, so these tracks must have been created some time after that.
車は普通のナンバーか。じゃなかったら確定なんだけど。
え、みゆきちゃん、今なんて？
いえ、なんでもないです。
Miyuki-chan brushed my question aside, then focused her flashlight inside the car once more. We carefully examined every corner of the driver and passenger seats with our flashlights, then moved on to the back seat. The back seat had a few magazines and CD cases strewn about, but nothing particularly interesting.
なあ、みゆきちゃん。 さっき何を言いかけたの？
大したことじゃないです。気にしないでください。
As she said that, Yuki-chan ran her gaze up and down the car's interior. Despite saying that it was nothing important, she continued painstakingly examining the car. We've already established that there are no people here, so what is she searching for now? She's not very good at lying. Feeling it awkward to stand idly by, I continued to check the inside of the car as well. However, I couldn't find anything particularly unusual. A keychain with a cutesy mascot character was dangling in the driver's seat.
運転手は女か？
Although it's pretty common for men to carry cute little accessories like that these days. No need to jump to conclusions.
特に異常はないみたいです。そろそろ行きましょうか。
ああ。
Following Miyuki-chan's suggestion, I stepped away from the car.
それにしても今どのあたりなんだろうな。
今、古出神社の手前ですね。ほら、ここです。
Miyuki-chan pulled out a map that I didn't even notice her bring, then spread it out and pointed the flashlight. She slid her finger across the map, then stopped at a specific point.
少し前に石段が見えますよね。神社はあの階段の上ですよ。
階段？
I turned my gaze upward as she said that, and even in the dark I could clearly make out the steep staircase climbing uphill. But even though I was certain there'd be a shrine gate at the top, I couldn't see it from here.
あんなの登るのかよ。なんだあるんだありゃ。
とにかく登るしかありませんよ。行きましょう、龍之介さん。
ああ。
Miyuki-chan walked forward at a decent pace, then began ascending the stone steps. I ran after her, skipping steps to catch up. However, the poor visibility and weak footing caused me to fall down to my hands and knees.
大丈夫ですか？滑りますから気をつけてくださいね。
ああ、悪い。
Miyuki-chan came down the stone steps to where I'd stumbled with an umbrella in hand. I couldn't see my feet very well. The rain had made the steps slick, and some of the steps were even covered in a slippery layer of moss. But despite all of that, Miyuki-chan was able to calmly ascend the steps. The constant rainfall left our bodies completely soaked.
大丈夫ですか？だいぶ冷えてきましたね。急ぎましょう。
I started to feel ashamed of myself. Wasn't I the leader of this expedition?
みゆきちゃんは大丈夫か？寒くない？
私は平気ですよ。龍之介さん、ここも苔がすごいです。足を滑らせないよう気をつけてくださいね。
了解。おっと。
My feet slipped just like earlier, right as I was in the middle of answering. On the other hand, Yuki-chan maintained a respectable pace, like she was walking a familiar path. I glanced down at her feet to notice she was wearing hiking boots. Clearly, she made appropriate preparations for a mountain excursion. I'm sorry if you can hear any what sounds like a truck or something passing by in the background. Don't know what's going on outside. Hopefully it will pass by relatively soon. I expect no less from someone with plenty of experience in Girl Scouts. After climbing several dozen steps, I was able to see the shrine gate at the top of the stairs. It may have looked quite dignified in the old days, but the frame was miserably dilapidated after years of neglect and weather exposure.
まさか壊れて崩れたりしないよな。
I timidly looked up at the shrine gate as I continued walking forward. In the next moment, I heard a single footstep from behind my back. I turned back, but nobody was there. Is that you, Hanyu?
どうしたんです？
いや、別に。
Miyuki-chan had already passed through the gate, but she must have noticed that I stopped moving. She looked back and asked about it, but I brushed her off with a vague answer. Miyuki-chan is walking in front of me, so those footsteps I heard couldn't be hers.
気のせいだ。
I said that to myself as I walked through the gate and entered the shrine grounds. Again. Miyuki-chan and I should be the only ones walking through the grounds. Then, what on earth are these footsteps? Well, if they're not Hanyu, then maybe they belong to the owner of that empty vehicle you came across earlier. That's one
あそこに見える
possibility.
のは本殿ですね。
ああ。あそこに誰かいる。なんてことはないよな。
一応確かめておきましょう。
As Miyuki-chan said that, she turned and began walking toward the offering box. So, I followed behind her. I began to feel frustrated that the constant footsteps seemed to mock me. It's probably just an echo. But even so, my mind focused behind me as I continued walking forward. It definitely felt like something was going on. I stepped into a puddle. I wasted so much attention on what was happening behind me that I neglected the ground by my feet.
散々だよ。
I sighed pathetically while turning my gaze down toward the puddle by my feet, and was suddenly startled. My feet were in a deep pool of blood. And beside my feet, is that a person lying there? Well, that's no good. It was a girl. The corpse of a young girl with her abdomen torn open was lying there, and her eyes looked like glass as they stared off vacantly. Rika? The body was partially obscured by the shadows of crow feathers scattered around it. And then, all around me I heard the sound of elderly people chanting a prayer. It's as if...
龍之介さん？
Miyuki-chan turned back to me as soon as she noticed the commotion.
どうしました？
みゆきちゃん、これ、
これ？
Miyuki-chan quizzically turned the flashlight down toward my feet. The only thing down there was a puddle.
あれ
The girl I saw lying there a moment ago was gone. I examined the puddle once more, and then the hem of my pants. My pants were plenty soaked, but it wasn't in blood.
龍之介さん、大丈夫ですか？
Ghosts of the past, I assume? The rain started coming down even heavier, and the raindrops vigorously slammed into the ground all around us. The cloud cover was so thick that the surrounding area was completely swallowed by the darkness. I couldn't see anything. I started to calm down and carefully trace my flashlight along my surroundings. But nonetheless, I couldn't see anything noteworthy.
どうしたんですか、龍之介さん？顔が真っ青ですよ。
ね、いや、幻覚見ちまったみたいでさ。
幻覚
Miyuki-chan seemed surprised and started intently surveying our surroundings. But the pounding rain seemed to eliminate any indications.
どんな幻覚ですか？人？それとも
いや、 ごめん。俺の気のせいかもな。
Maybe a trace amount of light poured between the clouds and illuminated the shrine gate or something, and I caught its reflection in the puddle. Then how do you explain the elderly people chanting? But could that explain the red hue of the blood? And what of the girl's corpse on the ground? Was it really a hallucination?
龍之介さん、幻覚を見ることってよくあるんですか？
まさかそんなものが見えるほど不健全な生活は送ってないっての。
そうですか。なんだか気味が悪いですね。
I struggled to find the words, so I couldn't say anything. But that vision I saw earlier may have stuck with me.
奴らの気配はないか。
奴らって？
あ、いえ、なんでもないです。
Would you stop hiding shit? A moment after Miyuki-chan said that,
先を越せたか。
a wicked smile floated across her face, and her eyes began to shine. What was that smile just now? I couldn't understand what Miyuki-chan was trying to say. And who was she talking about when she said them? I looked down at the puddle once more. No matter how I shined my flashlight on it, I couldn't see anything reflected in the water.
行きましょう、龍之介さん。
What was that smile earlier? It feels like strange things have started happening since we arrived in Hinamizawa. And those unfortunate events were what caused this change in her? But if that's the case, am I next?
まさかな。
I started walking forward to shake off the ridiculous ideas running through my head. Just then, I noticed a large broken lantern lying on the ground with some characters scrawled on the side.
綿流し。
Hinamizawaの村祭りのことですね。どうやら村祭りがここで行われていたようです。
神社の境内でか。当時は賑やかだったんだろうな。
ここってちょっとした公共施設だったみたいですよ。きっとこの集会所では村のイベントやお稽古ごとの教室なども開かれていたんでしょう。
へえ、なるほどね。
Though I said that, I wasn't particularly interested in Miyuki-chan's explanation. After all, I knew all that before coming here. Of course, it wouldn't be so strange for her to know something about this that I didn't know. It might be arrogant of me to say, but I did do a fair amount of research on Hinamizawa beforehand, and I'm proud of the information I managed to gather. So, how could this woman named Miyuki Sorimachi have gathered so much information beyond what I could find? Well, number one, probably because her father she may have gotten some of the information from her father. And perhaps most importantly, what I want to know is, most of all, is Miyuki, why did you change your last name? Are you undercover or something? Moreover, Miyuki-chan described it in a way that seemed like a local describing current events. Like a resident of this village was giving a tour to a group of outsiders. Though I felt bad for doing it, I was gradually starting to feel suspicious of her. Miyuki-chan finished making an offering, then began walking toward the assembly hall, leaving me behind.
こっちに集会所があるはずです。どうしました、龍之介さん。
みゆきちゃんってこの村のことずいぶん。
ええ、まあ私もまた聞きですからよく知りませんけどね。
second-hand information. Yeah, okay. How much of that was the truth? It felt like my heart was going to be crushed by the wave of doubt swelling inside. Why are there lights on inside the building? Miyuki-chan and I came to a halt after walking around the corner. Even though there shouldn't be anyone in the assembly hall, I noticed the light leaking out through the front door.
誰かいますね。
だな。もしかして、さっきの車の持ち主かな。
さあ、どうでしょうか。
Yuki-chan and I tried to assess the situation, but it was difficult to tell from here.
あの明かり、さっき高台から見えたやつかな。
おそらく。
しばらく様子を見た方がいいんじゃない？
様子って、それじゃ集会所には行かないってことですか？
I think it would be well, I mean, is there really any harm in doing a little bit of reconnaissance? I mean, what if the people inside are dangerous in some way? You don't know if they're safe or not.
ああ、その方が。
I heard something fall to the ground inside the assembly hall. And then, a woman's voice. But I couldn't make out what she was saying.
行ってみましょう。
行ってみるって？
集会所の中にです。ちょっと確かめてみても損はないと思いますよ。
I disagree. Miyuki-chan put a hand on the assembly hall door as she said that. So, I quickly reached down and grabbed her hand.
ちょっと待った！幽霊とかだったらどうするんだよ。
No comment.
はい。
Yuki-chan let out a light sigh and looked at me. Then she gave me a bewildered look that clearly said, "What are you talking about?"
あ、いや、その、だから。
まあ、その可能性も確かにありますが、幽霊なのかそうでないのかは確かめてみなくちゃわからないでしょ？
I think that truck is finally going away.
そりゃ、そうだけど。
It's not that I'm scared. I was just thinking, we need to stay cautious and choose the best possible course of action here. Because I'm not afraid. I'm definitely not afraid.
幽霊だったら私が殴り倒してあげます。ドア開けますよ。
あ、おい。
However, my objections were completely ignored. Yuki-chan was brave enough to slide the assembly hall door open in one quick pull. That moment, I felt something jabbing into my throat. See? Told you they could have been dangerous. And the next moment, someone jumped in from the side and pushed me away. It was Miyuki-chan. As I staggered to regain my footing, I caught a glimpse of a kimono sleeve in front of me. Well, look who it is. I lightly rubbed my hip where I was hit. Then a frightening look ran across my face as I realized what was happening. A woman in a kimono was standing in the shadow of the doorway, in a blind spot that couldn't be seen from the entrance. There was a magical atmosphere about her that didn't feel of this world. A ghost? The word came to mind, but I couldn't bring myself to speak it. She pointed the tip of a slender object straight toward Miyuki-chan. What was it? Was that what was pressed against my throat earlier?
Miyuki-chan!
Miyuki-chan was standing directly across from the woman and staring straight at her. Miyuki-chan and the woman continued their motionless confrontation for a while longer. And the woman was the first to open her mouth.
あんたたち、何問題？
いや、
Her deep, powerful voice left me awestricken. I shrank back. However, Miyuki-chan stood resolute and maintained her composure.
こういう場合は先に名乗るのが礼儀でしょう。ほう、別に怪しいものじゃないです。これ下げてもらえませんか？
After letting out a quick sigh, the woman pulled the slender object back and slid it under her armpit. Her sharp eyes darted back and forth between Miyuki-chan and me. Eventually, the tension in her face relaxed.
なんであんたみたいなのがこんなお姉さんと一緒にいるんだろうね。
それ、どういう意味で？
The woman in the kimono didn't answer me. She simply chuckled to herself quietly. And Miyuki-chan seemed unstirred by this woman's perplexing reaction.
夜分にすみませんが、電話をお借りしたいんですけど、よろしいでしょうか？電話？バカをお言いでないよ。
This voice. Mion? Or Shion?
こんな村に電話なんてあるわけないだろう？ここをどこだと思ってるんだい？Hinamizawaは知っての通り、廃村だよ。ですね。もしかしたらって思ったんですけど。期待を裏切って申し訳ないね。私が謝ることじゃないんだけどさ。
The woman in the kimono had relaxed her tension enough to tease us in an affable tone. She was probably close to 40 years old. An inscrutable atmosphere emanated from her entire body, giving her an imposing, dignified presence. If it's around the 40-year age range, then it's probably not Mion or Shion. Then it is her mother after all. She had a lovely color to her skin, but her finely chiseled facial features had me feeling doubts about her background.
とにかく中へお入りよ。
And her lips have vanished.
濡れたまんまでそんなところにいたんじゃ風邪ひくよ。
みゆきちゃん。
じゃあお言葉に甘えて。
At the woman's request, Miyuki-chan and I walked into the assembly hall. The crumbling wooden frame of the assembly hall smelled faintly of mold. Rain and wind came blowing in through a broken window. Posters and wallpapers were fixed to the pillars and walls here and there. Although it was difficult to make out, I could read the phrases Onikafuchi Guardians and Dam Opposition. According to newspaper articles and other sources I've read, there was a plan to construct a dam in this village a long time ago. The planned dam would have submerged Hinamizawa, but the strong opposition and the murder incidents caused the plan to be suspended. But that topic largely faded away after the Great Hinamizawa disaster. I imagine the villagers here sticking these posters to the walls they discussed the dam construction project and their opposition plans. The struggles that occurred in the Showa era, like the labor striking movement, felt almost as distant as the Industrial Revolution or the dawn of civilization. It felt unnatural to step into a space littered with relics of another era. Somehow, it felt like I was stepping into another world.
こっちさ。
As she said that, the woman in the kimono vigorously slid the door inside the hallway open. Who are you two? Once I saw the assembly hall in front of me lined in entire tatami mats, I let out a quiet ah in shock. I noticed a man in the room, staring at us with a stagnant look in his eyes. So, the lady in traditional clothing wasn't the only one here. At any rate, standing around doing nothing wasn't helping anything. So I stepped one foot into the room, hoping to prompt Miyuki-chan to do the same.
こんばんは。お邪魔しますね。
But Miyuki-chan, with her nerves of steel, stepped into the room and greeted everyone in a lively, cheerful voice that felt entirely out of place. And here I thought they were gone. The truck, I mean. And so, I reluctantly followed behind her. Inside the room, I noticed a young man around 20 years of age, and a young woman around the same age or a little older. And the two of them were staring at us like we were suspicious characters. Looking closer, there was one more man sleeping on a futon in the corner of the room. Counting the woman in the kimono, there were 4 people here in total. They didn't stand up or return the greeting in any fashion. They simply continued staring vacantly at us, with their lifeless, ghostly eyes. Feeling creeped out, I quickly turned away and was immediately startled. Oh boy, what did I do to irk you, Miyuki? Contrary to her cheerful greeting, Miyuki-chan was monitoring the people in the room with a sharp, bloodthirsty glow in her eyes.
Miyuki-chan?
Maybe she noticed me staring. Miyuki-chan turned back to me with a bright smile. What on earth was that face just now? Well, clearly it's a face that communicates that she's greatly suspicious of the people that are in this room.
皆さん、お休みのところすみません。お電話をお借りしたいと思ってお邪魔しました。ちょっと失礼しますね。
The assembly hall was in disrepair. The tatami mats were tattered, and there were cobwebs stretched all across the furniture. Miyuki-chan scanned the interior of the room, then walked over to a public phone in a corner of the assembly hall. But once she got there, she let out a discouraging sigh.
電話はどうやらこれしかないみたいですね。
だな。
A vintage pink public phone was laying on the ground and covered in dust, and the cord was cut. There was no point in lifting the receiver. It was very clearly dead.
他にはないのかな？
なさそうですけど。あんたたち、どこに電話したいんだい？
What business is that of yours?
ちょっと、警察に。
The moment Miyuki-chan said that, the 2 apathetic-looking people suddenly looked up and stared with attention.
警察ってなんで？人が死んでたんだよ。ここに来る途中で車の中で全員座席に座ったまま。
そんな。
Everyone in the room gasped in unison. Or more accurately, all but one. The woman in traditional garb rose to her feet and stood with a piercing gaze in her eyes.
見たんですか？
見たって何が？
死体ですよ。本当にみんな死んで。
ああ、まあな。
I hesitated to talk about what I'd seen.
全員綺麗な顔して死んでたぜ。
I like how you draw attention to their beautiful faces. An odd detail to mention.
それが？
いえ、僕死体は苦手だから。
誰も得意なやつなんていねえだろ。
そうですよね。
The young man let out a forced laugh, then looked down. Maybe it was just poor lighting, but his face looked pale.
どのあたりなんですか？その自殺者の車って。
How did you know it's a suicide? I don't recall mentioning any details of a suicide.
ここからそんなに遠くないとこだよね、みゆきちゃん。みゆきちゃん？
早く警察に連絡しないとね。
Yeah, these people are definitely suspicious. They act like as though they act surprised when we mention those dead people, and yet we didn't bring up anything about them being suicide victims. Has Miyuki-chan been thinking about something completely different this whole time?
あなた方の携帯はダメなんですか？
県外なんですよ。ねえ龍之介さん。
ああ。
村の電話が一つでも使えればと思って電話を探しに来たんですけど。
After Miyuki-chan said that, the young woman pulled out her cell phone and flipped the screen open. Her phone was on a different carrier, so I thought there might be a chance. But in the end, her phone was just as useless. The woman in the kimono pulled out a cell phone of her own and held it up to her ear to check. But after a while, she ended the call and shrugged her shoulders.
かかんないね。だいたいこんなところで電話なんかつながるわけがないだろ。
The young woman tried holding the phone at several different angles to get a better signal, but in the end she shook her head and spoke up.
私のもダメみたいです。県外でした。
Looking closer at the young lady, she was dressed in a fluffy balloon skirt made of light cotton. It's the kind of casual dress you'd wear in a town on a date. She's probably wearing sandals or high heels that match. I couldn't possibly see her wearing hiking boots at that. There were beer cans and snack bags scattered about in front of her. Was she drinking here at the man in the corner of the room, and he fell asleep drunk? Going out on a date in a place like this? And not only that, but getting drunk?
どうかしたんですか？
あ、いや、なんでもない。
Then I noticed the young woman was glaring at me with an unpleasant expression. Maybe she noticed me staring at her. Then she quickly turned her gaze downward and reached for a bag of snacks on the floor. Beside her, the young man was sitting quietly and holding his knees, staring off at the tatami floor in the distance.
あなたはどうですか？乙部、さっきからどうしたんだい？ビクビクして。
The woman in the kimono waved her cell phone about as she stared at the man she called Otobe. He shrugged his shoulders, then muttered something in an apologetic tone.
すみません。ちょっと考え事を。
携帯どうですか？つながりますか？
電源入れてみます。
電源切ってたら携帯電話の意味がないんじゃないですか？
それはまあそうですね。
He stared at the woman in the kimono as he said that. Then the next moment he looked startled. I wondered what he saw. I turned to see what Otobe was looking at. But the woman in the kimono was in the shade, so I couldn't make out her face.
おい、お前。
すみません。電池が切れかかってたんで、電源切ってたんですよ、僕。
Then why didn't you say that the first time? Otobe turned his back to me and blocked the display with both his hands to keep his phone hidden from me. Then he carefully operated the buttons while staring at the screen.
こんな山の中じゃ電話なんてつながるもんじゃないよ。沖宮まで行って直接話した方がいいんじゃないのかい？それとも。
僕の携帯アンテナ1本なら立つかも。
マジかよ。
うん、大丈夫そうです。玄関の方に行けばもっと立つかも。
Otobe continued staring at his cell phone as he got up to leave the room. And all the while, Otobe avoided making eye contact with any of us. Eventually, I could hear his voice faintly echoing down the hallway.
もしもし、警察ですか？はい。はい。
お、あいつの携帯、なんとか繋がったみたいだな。
どうやら、そうみたいですね。
And yet he made an effort to block us from being able to see his phone screen. How we know he's not just putting on an act. Miyuki-chan was staring intently toward Otobe. For some reason, she didn't look very happy. Well, I share your unhappiness. Was there something troubling about the fact that his phone was able to connect? Yes.
Miyuki-chan?
Then I noticed that the woman in the kimono was also staring in Otobe's direction as well, with an equally harsh look on her face. And then, Otobe's voice came echoing throughout the assembly hall.
Hinamizawa です。はい。集団自殺で。僕もまた聞きなんでよくわからないんですけど。はい。はい。
Maybe Otobe was growing uncomfortable with all of us staring at him. He turned completely away from us, bowed down, and began to lower his voice.
とにかく、あいつが連絡してくれたなら、もう大丈夫だな。
だと、いいですね。
If I were in their position, I would have a knife ready to draw out at a moment's notice in case any of these people tried to jump me or something, because I'm getting multiple red flags from I'd be getting multiple red flags from these people. What was that? Miyuki-chan's words seemed to have some hidden subtext. Was it just my imagination? The next moment, I heard Otobe shouting, "Ah!"
どうした？
携帯、電池切れちゃいました。
Well, isn't that just inconvenient?
すみません。
Otobe looked upset as he said that, while walking into the room with his cell phone in hand. There definitely wasn't anything displayed on his phone screen.
まあでも、途中までは警察と話せたんだし、警察も大体分かってくれただろう。
そうですよね。
Otobe's eyes started shaking erratically as he said that. Does this guy suffer from intense social anxiety? Or maybe we're putting these guys in a very awkward spot, and they are super eager for us to leave, possibly by any means necessary.
これで外部と連絡を取る手段は完全に断たれたってことですね。
まあ、夜はどっちみち動けないんだからさ。のんびりと警察が来るまで待つしかねえよな。
Yeah, there'd be no way I'd be able to relax.
ですね。
Especially not these suspicious characters. Miyuki let out an exasperated sigh as she came back into the room. As I went to take a seat on the tatami mat, the young woman in the balloon skirt moved to the side to clear a space. Miyuki-chan took a seat next to her.
それにしてもさ、無人のはずのこの村で少女が5人も顔を揃えるなんて、これはきっと何かのご縁だよね。それじゃあ死者しか住まぬこの村で一夜限りのお付き合いといこうかね。
The woman in the kimono grabbed her long rod-shaped object wrapped in cloth and held it under her arm. Then she grabbed a bottle of sake, opened the cap, and held it up. With nothing better to do, I grabbed a sake glass and held it up to receive some. You idiot. you would just take some random drink that some clearly very suspicious strangers offer you. That thing could be laced with some kind of anesthetic for all you know, and then next time you wake up, you might find that your kidney's missing, or worse. But she quickly swept my hand away.
これはそこのお姉さんにだよ。
She looked straight at Miyuki-chan as she said that. Her eyes had an imposing presence.
どうも。
A courageous grin floated to Miyuki-chan's face as she received a glass of sake and took a sip.
みゆきちゃん。
ごちそうさまです。
いい飲みっぷりだね。
どうも。それじゃあ、私も。
Miyuki-chan poured another glass of sake and held it out to the woman in the kimono.
どうぞ。
それじゃあ、せっかくだからいただこうかね。
The woman in the kimono graciously accepted the glass offered to her.
お酒はお強いんですか？
あんたほどじゃないがね。まあ一夜は長い。長いようで短いようで。でね。
The woman in the kimono's sharp eyes looked like they could see through anything. It felt like her eyes were trying to learn something from Miyuki-chan. But Miyuki-chan wasn't fazed by the woman's gaze. She was confronting her face to face. What's the deal with this woman? Why is she so concerned with Miyuki-chan? And Miyuki-chan is acting the same. It's like the two of them are old acquaintances.
あ、龍之介さん。私、車から荷物取ってきます。
みゆきちゃんはここにいな。荷物なら俺が。
いいんです。
And you just decide to go and separate, while leaving one of yourselves behind with this group of strangers. Are you trying to get yourselves killed?
荷物がいっぱい積んであって、どれがキャンプ道具なのかきっとわからないと思うから。
Look, this is whoever the other two newbies are. I know who Mion Shion's mother is, and I know she at the very least likely isn't going to kill anybody. But these two newcomers, on the other hand, well, who knows? At the very least, I mean, they also have let a few things slip here that showed me here that they know more about what might be happening in this village than they're letting on. So they got some secrets of their own. At the very freaking least, you shouldn't separate until you can verify that these people that you're unfamiliar with are indeed trustworthy. Like, I'm just speaking common sense. Last I checked. Come on, man. Show some survival instinct.
それじゃ。
Miyuki-chan gently smiled to the woman in the kimono, then quickly rose to her feet. And then, she stormed out of the room in a hurry. Miyuki-chan was keeping secrets from me. I was fairly convinced of that. However, I had no idea what they might be. And I had no idea why the woman in the kimono was so interested in Miyuki-chan, despite allegedly meeting her for the first time today. We're in an abandoned village, where all the villagers perished in the disaster. The odds of running into someone you know in a place like this are slim. Moreover, what are the odds that a freelance writer from Tokyo would be acquainted with this creepy woman in a kimono at all? I can't say that's impossible, but the probability seems quite low. And what's more, even if the two of them are acquainted, they're not speaking to each other as such. So, what on earth is going on? On top of that, I'm beginning to doubt that Miyuki-chan's a freelance writer at all.
それじゃ、 とりあえず名前くらい聞いとこうかね。
The woman in the kimono looked directly at me as she asked that. The others followed her lead and started looking at me, like they were all just waiting for me to speak up.
いきなり俺
順番に行こうじゃないか。私たちもさっき来たとこでさ、まだみんな名前も知らない者同士なんだ。
The young woman in the balloon skirt and the young man named Otobe stared vacantly at me. And after their gazes fixated on me, I finally realized. That's it. These people have no light in their eyes, like ghosts who've lost their souls.
どうしたんだい？早く頼むよ。
And so, the woman in the kimonos at the woman in the kimonos urging, I took a deep breath. Who are these people? I grabbed a can of beer off the floor, pulled the tab, and took a big gulp. The beer was lukewarm, and one of the most disgusting things I've ever tasted. New tips unlocked along the way, a trip and a familiar face. Okay, let's see what these are. He stayed home all day that day, laying on the tatami floor, occasionally looking out the window or messing with his cell phone, not doing much of anything. He wasn't drinking alcohol like usual, but that didn't mean things were safe. So, after finishing the dishes, I carefully chose my words and decided to speak with him.
匠くん
Yae? That's your name? He responded in a weak voice without turning around. I was a little disappointed that he didn't turn around. But no, it's better this way. These days, it's been painful seeing him face to face.
さ、昨日職場の人に借りた雑誌にHinamizawa村って場所の紹介が載っててね。そこってだいぶ昔に大災害があってずっと閉鎖されていたんだけど、最近それが解除されたんだって。でね、恐ろしくて誰も近寄らないって言われてるんだけど、本当は自然がいっぱいで静かないいところらしいの。景色も良くてよくある観光地みたいに人の手が入ってないから空気もとっても美味しいんだって。
Oh, I see.
匠くん、そういう人のいない自然の多い場所って前から好きだって言ってたでしょ。来週私連休がもらえるから一緒に行ってみないかな。きっとすごくいい気分転換になると思うの。ダメかな。
The next moment, his body suddenly started to rise up. When I saw it, I immediately held my breath and started to brace myself.
ごめんなさい。別に私、匠くんが嫌なら。
Driving.
え？
Are we taking your car? Then it's fine. Is this your boyfriend, by any chance? And if so, I think I can tell that, your relationship with this man isn't exactly the most secure, shall we say? After hearing that, I was able to release a little bit of the tension and catch my breath. Then he got up, walked right past me, slipped on his shoes, and went off somewhere. Yeah, let's go. To Hinamizawa. Somehow, I don't think this fellow and this Otobe we've seen are the same person. So I can't help but wonder if Yae is indeed the woman we were looking at just a few minutes ago. Then where did this guy go? Unless he just happened to be one of the people who we found dead in that car. I smell a Scooby-Doo mystery here, ladies and gentlemen. Familiar face. Where did I lose the way? I really did get myself lost in a completely unknown world. Hinamizawa village. This place became an abandoned ruin after the gas disaster over 20 years ago. After that, everyone was afraid of the mysterious incidents and rumors. Nobody ever goes anywhere near nowadays. It's a ghost town that they even took off the maps. Wait a minute, 20 years ago. Mion and Shion would have been, what? How old were they? 16, I think? 17? Around that age range. So, fast forward 20 years, that would put either of them, if they survived to the present day, around 36, 37 years old. They mentioned that the woman in the kimono that we met here looked to be around 40. And I noted how the woman in the kimono sounds like Mion and Shion. So, is my initial guess on her identity right after all? After that, everyone's afraid of the mysterious incidents and rumors. Nobody ever goes anywhere near nowadays. It's a ghost town that they even took off the maps. That's right. There's nobody here. That should be. And yet...
No.
Up ahead. There was a person dressed in a mourning kimono, holding up an umbrella, dripping wet in the middle of the pouring rain. She had a mysterious aura, somewhere between the living and the dead.
Oh.
And I could see a long, slender, cloth-wrapped object bouncing around attached to her back. A pipe? A wooden sword? Or maybe an actual sword? I swallowed my spit and quickly started to lose my resolve. Even from behind, I could tell she was suspicious. I felt the danger in the air.
ここ出るらしいよ。
As I remembered the words I said myself earlier, a chill ran through me and I began to tremble. What should I do? Even though it's abnormal for another person to be in a place like this. What can I do? Should I say something? Or... Just then, The woman in the kimono started walking in the opposite direction of where I stood. When I saw that, I started to panic and suddenly called out, "Wait!" She stopped as requested, but her back was still turned. I could feel the sharp tension coming from behind her back. Bloodlust.
もうやけた。
Since escape was no longer possible, I decided to step forward and speak up. "You idiot! You had a chance to escape by just simply not calling out to her! What the hell's wrong with you?"
僕、観光でここに来たものなんですけど、道に迷って、もしよろしければ、人里はどっちの方か。
人里。
I could hear her exhale through her nose, like she was laughing at me. And then,
人里はどちらかと言われたら、私の歩いてきた方向が人里だね。不慣れなあんたでも、歩けば夜明けまでにはたどり着けるんじゃないか？もっとも、途中で道を間違えて、矢後地あたりに迷い込んじまうかもしれないけどね。
it wasn't much of an answer, but for now, it was a relief just to hear anything at all. Thank goodness. Looks like she's a human, not a ghost.
よろしければ、案内してもらえると嬉しいんですが。
はっ、冗談を言いでないよ。私は自分の用事でここまで来てんだ。あんたの道案内をしにここまで来てるんじゃないよ。自分のことは自分でするんだね。村を出たいんなら、その目的に一生懸命になるといい。つまり、一生懸命自分一人で道を探して、一人で歩いて出て行けってことさ。
In other words, she wouldn't be able to do it. So, am I going to be lost here all night?
あなたはどこへ行くんですか？
この先にある古出神社に用があるの。Sadako? The next moment, she casually turned around to face me eye to eye, or Satoshi, and then her eyes suddenly opened wide. And then she fixated on my face as she moved in for a closer look. サトシ。
Well, I think I more or less just got my confirmation that it's probably Mion or Shion. I didn't know how to respond to a name I didn't recognize. When she said the name Satoshi, was she talking about me?
サトシなのかい？
僕はアキラですけど。
アキラ？
はい。乙部アキラです。
I thought it was a case of mistaken identity, so I panicked and said my name again. After hearing that, she quietly gazed at my face for a while. And then she let out a lonely-sounding laugh.
なんだ、違うのかい。にしても驚いたね。あんた、私の昔の友人に瓜二つだよ。他人の空似とはよく言ったもんだね。
そうなんですか。
Old friend, so yeah, I think it's Mion.
別人とはいえ、久しぶりに来た村で、こんな懐かしい顔に出会えるなんてね。てっきり幽霊かと思って自分の目を疑っちまったよ。 それにしてもこの幽霊村で人に出会うこと自体珍しいってのに、こりゃ一体何の偶然なんだかね。
She smiled while carefully watching me with her arms crossed. Though she was smiling, she stared straight at me with a sharp gaze in her eyes, and it made me flinch.
まあいい。これも何かの縁だ。お前さんが朝まで雨を浴びていたいって言うんじゃなきゃ、一緒に来るかい？
いいんですか？
いいも悪いも、あたしは来るかいって言ってんだ。質問を質問で返すんじゃないよ。あとはあんたの意思次第じゃないかい？
ぜひ、ご一緒させてください。
I'm saved. I felt like I was about to burst into dance as I nodded to her over and over. After seeing that, the woman smiled and nodded, and started walking again.
昔のままなら集会所には毛布があったはずだからね。そのびしょ濡れの上着はそこで乾かした方がいい。もっともあれから20年以上も経ってるから、屋根が抜けて畳が腐っている可能性もあるけどね。
あなたはこの村の人だったんですか？
ああ、そうか。自己紹介がまだだったね。あたしはミオン。ミオン。いかにもこの村の住人だよ。
So, in this particular arc, you're alive. And sane. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, if it's Mion, then I think I can already figure out why she's here in Hinamizawa. She's probably here to do her own investigation to what happened during the so-called disaster, and maybe get herself some form of closure. And apparently Otobe is here for sightseeing, and Yae supposedly came here with somebody else, but he's no longer around. So I guess if there's anybody here who out of these three I could count as the most suspicious, not counting Miyuki, it would probably be Yae. Let's continue. I chugged the beer down in one big gulp. The aftertaste was equally terrible. But even so, I belched out the fizz gathering in my throat, and eventually found the resolve to push myself forward. I took a deep breath, then pulled a business card out in the notebook in my breast pocket, and held it up where everyone could see.
それじゃ、俺から自己紹介。名前は荒川龍之介。売れっ子のフリーライターだ。
売れっ子ね。
The woman dressed in traditional clothing chuckled to herself. Oh, shut up. It's the beer talking, okay?
専門はオカルト。
I think it's your insecurity that's speaking. The beer is just making you honest about it.
ちなみに今月号の週刊セブン幽霊村大特集号は俺が書いた。よろしくな。
幽霊村の特集？じゃあ、あの記事はあなたが？
The young woman seemed completely disinterested at first, but she appeared surprised all of a sudden and looked up to respond.
知ってるのかい？
はい、私読みました。
僕もその特集号なら読みました。結構いろんな場所の話が載ってて面白いなって。
そいつはどうも。あれは資料とかの下調べで難儀したからな。そう言ってもらえるとやった甲斐があるよ。
Being praised for my articles made me hold my head up high. But the woman in the kimono had a lukewarm reaction, simply tilting her head to the side as if to say, "Is that so?"
週刊セブン。へえ、みんな読んでるなんて、その雑誌すごい人気なんだね。
たまにしか読まないんですけど、電車の釣り広告とかで見出しだけは欠かさず見てます。今月号はたまたま買っちゃったっていうか。
もしかしてあんた週刊セブン知らないの？
聞いたこともないね。
本当かよ。
Her words stung a bit. The Weekly Seven is a famous gossip magazine that appeals to a wide age range. It's been around since the dawn of the Heisei era, 1989 through 2019, and even shows up in TV commercials. It's been providing high-profile coverage of all sorts of issues. This is my first time meeting someone who never read it, much less never even heard of it. She must be living a life completely disconnected from the outside world.
週刊セブンは釣り広告とか新聞とかでよく宣伝してるから見ればわかると思いますよ。ロゴは確か赤字に白抜きです。
あいにくそういう広告は記憶に残ってないよ。
The woman in the kimono looked puzzled as she said that. How heartbreaking.
驚いたな。週刊セブンを知らないなんて。雑誌とかはあまり読まないのか？
そういうわけじゃないけどさ。それであんたたちはその記事を見てここへ来たっていうのかい？
あ、いえ、僕は偶然ですよ。
私も偶然です。
Yeah, I know you're lying.
記事を読んでここへ来たわけじゃありませんよ。
It seemed unnatural for both of them to declare that all at once. And even if it wasn't their primary reason, it would have been good social etiquette to just say, I read the article and it made me more interested in this place.
それじゃあ荒川がここへ来たのは取材か何かってわけかい？
Well, I guess I should say that Yae here isn't really lying per se. She's just not telling me everything, that's all.
もちろんですよ。
I started to mention the Occult Special, second edition, but I cut myself off. Given that a group of strangers were gathered together in an abandoned building, the situation was occult enough on its own. And on top of that, all these people have a lifeless look in their eyes.
しかし記者さんか。あんたみたいなやつを見てると、もう少し自分を大事にしろって言いたくなるよ。
I don't know. If anything, I think that your average journalist tends to value themselves a little too much.
お気遣い、どうも。
That seemed like an annoyingly roundabout way of insulting my occupation. Then the woman in the kimono poured herself another cup of sake and pointed her chin toward the young woman.
それじゃあ次はあんたの番だよ。お嬢さん。
私は十和田です。
The young woman looked a little embarrassed as she began speaking, so she lightly lowered her head.
十和田八重って言います。向こうで寝てるのは私の連れで黒沢匠くんです。
Oh, that's Takumi. Then okay, then yeah, they did mention a fourth person just on the floor. I just completely forgot about him shortly after he was mentioned. Dang. Takumi, you have absolutely no stain presence whatsoever. I'm impressed. As she said that, she turned back toward the young man sleeping in the corner of the room. He was apparently sleeping quite soundly, so there was no indication he'd be joining this conversation.
あんたら夫婦してるのかい？
いえ、違います。夫婦とかそんなんじゃないです。彼は私の彼氏でまだそこまでじゃないっていうか。
Towada-san bashfully waved her arms as she denied that implication. But she definitely said boyfriend, so the relationship has probably been going on for a while.
この村へはドライブで来ました。二人で旅行したのは初めてで、ちょっと緊張しちゃって。匠くんは疲れて今ちょっと寝ちゃってますけど、日帰りのつもりで東京からやってきました。あ、学生じゃなくて、一応社会人です。よろしくお願いします。
Towada-san anxiously said all that in a single breath. She sounded like an audience member on a variety show who was suddenly called onto the stage. I wasn't sure what I should say in response to Towada-san, so Otobe and I simply lowered our heads a little to acknowledge the greeting.
ドライブってことはデートでここへ来たってことだよな。
そうですけど。
いや、その村人が全員死んだっていう廃村にデートしに来るなんて変わってるなって思ってさ。
そうですか?
Well, yeah, that is a little odd. You can't, I mean, you gotta be honest about that. Towada-san looked upset as she stared at me. Well, I get it makes sense if they're the sort of couple who likes to visit occult spots together. There's plenty to be curious about here. But for some reason, that just didn't feel right. She didn't look like the sort of girl who would go out drinking with a man in a place like this.
まあ、人それぞれさ。にしても彼女を置いて男は先に酔いつぶれてグースか寝ちまったのか。こんな村で可愛い彼女を残して高いびきだなんて。たく、彼氏ってのは気楽なもんだね。
Speaking of people leaving other people behind. Hey Miyuki! Are you almost back? The woman in the kimono slowly turned to the sleeping young man as she said that. However, Towada-san simply gave us a vague smile.
ちょっと長旅だったもので。
まあいいさ。あんたも飲みなよ。
はい。
As the woman in the kimono prompted, Towada-san took a sip of her oolong tea. The liquor bottle was still over half full. And despite all the beer cans littered on the floor, only one had traces of lipstick on the mouth. The sake bottle the woman in the kimono has been guzzling down was only recently opened, so Towada-san probably hasn't had much alcohol at all. Meanwhile, Otobe has been anxiously fidgeting his fingertips the whole time while listening to our exchange.
Otobe, ほら、あんたも食べな。
あ、はい。イカですか。
なんだい、イカは嫌いかい？
いえ。
だったら食べな。しっかり食べてないからそんなに青っちょろくなっちまうんだよ。
No, for me that would just make me hate it even more.
ほら、しっかり食べな。ほら、ほらほらほら。
Sure you sure it's not just because you don't want to eat it? Mion? Otobe sat there bewildered as the woman in the kimono gently piled the bags of dried squid in his hands.
いただきます。うまい。
だろ?
As soon as Otobe spoke favorably of the dried squid, the woman in the kimono gave a satisfied nod. Anyway, there was something warm about the way the woman in the kimono looked at Otobe. How on earth are the two of them connected?
ところでオトベ、あんたも野球か何かやってんのかい？
Just like Satoshi?
僕はそういうのは。っていうか、僕運動とかは全然。
そこまでは一緒じゃないか。確かに野球とかやってそうには見えないもんね。
何のことだよ。
I cut in on her conversation to ask about it. Based on the way she was talking to him, could these two be somehow acquainted?
いや、僕、知り合いに似ているみたいなんです。
知り合い？ひょっとして共通の知り合い？
そんなんじゃないよ。私の知り合いサトシってんだ。もう20年以上も前の話だよ。それにサトシはもうとっくに死んじゃってるからね。
Based on the tone of her voice, she seemed quite fond of this Satoshi.
僕もよくは知らないんですけど、いい人だったみたいです。
もちろんさ。こう言っちゃなんだけど、サトシはあんたなんかよかずーっとしっかりしてたよ。
Oof.
すみません。
ところであんたらはどういう知り合い？
この村へ着いてすぐに会ったんです。だから僕はあんまり。
Something about the tone of his voice irritated me. I'm no good at dealing with people who can't act their age. In fact, I straight up dislike them. Be sure to think about that thought long and hard next time you get scared by ghosts.
あんた、名前は？
That's why. My voice grew harsher, even though I knew I was being childish. Otobe jumped in a panic and scrambled to set the bags in his hands down on the tatami mat.
すみません。自己紹介が遅れました。僕は乙部明。僕もドライブできました。
Otobe suddenly responded in a trembling voice, like a street interviewer had abruptly handed him the microphone. This guy, too. Honestly, I find it hard to believe such a timid young man would come here all on his own. As I pondered that, Otobe turned to avoid eye contact. And then, he resumed fidgeting uncomfortably.
あんたもこんなとこにドライブかよ。一人で？
いえ、いろいろあって、友達とはぐれてしまったんです。
はぐれた？
はい。
はぐれたってなんだよ。
Despite my piling inquiries, Otobe simply turned his head downward and remained silent. Oh, this is bad. Maybe I came on too strong and questioned him a bit too harshly. With that in mind, I cleared my throat and began to say something to calm him down and urge him to continue. And then...
途中でみんな消えてしまったんです。
は？
The moment Otobe said that, the assembly hall fell completely silent.
消えたってどういうことですか？
おいおい、いきなり百物語か？そういう話はもう少し場が温まってから。
そんなんじゃないんです。本当なんですよ。
Otobe slammed the floor of his fist and turned to me with a serious look in his eyes. Once I saw that, I stopped making fun of him and urged him to continue.
どういうことなんだ？説明してくれ。
今朝、東京出て、僕たち山沿いの道をずっと走ってたんです。運転は友達がしてました。それで、しばらくして、この村全体がよく見えるような、ちょっと見晴らしがいいところに出たんです。
For people used to city life, the scenery certainly does look picturesque. If they arrived in the afternoon when it wasn't raining, it would make sense to stop the car and take a look around.
そこで、ちょっとトイレ休憩でもしようってことになって、僕は用を足そうと思って茂みの方に行って、その後戻ってきたら、車ごとなくなっていたんです。
With so little context, the story was hard to believe. Besides...
それってさ、言っちゃ悪いけど、あんた、友達に置いてかれたんじゃねえの？ 友達はさ、あんたを怖がらせようとしてんじゃね？どんな友達だか知らないけどさ、友達はひょっとしてまだその辺に隠れてて、あんたが一人で怖がってるのを楽しんでるんじゃねえの？
そんなはずありませんから。
Otobe smacked his dried squid on the floor and looked me directly in the eyes. Hey now, the dried squid is for eating, not slamming.
僕の友達はそんな意地悪じゃありません。勝手なこと言わないでください。
だよな。悪い悪い。いちいちムキになるなって、可能性の話をしてるだけ。
僕は車のすぐ近くで用を足していたんです。でも走り去るエンジンの音は聞こえなかった。
Otobe was so upset that his shoulders were moving up and down as he breathed. He seemed outraged by the mere suggestion of doubting his friends. Was that really something to get so mad about?
それじゃあ本当に車が忽然と消えてしまったってことですか？友達も一緒に？でもそんなのちょっと信じられないけど。
僕にだってわけがわからないですよ。それでパニクって友達とか車とか探してあちこち走り回っているうちに崖から足を滑らせて。
Towada-san and I remained silent as Otobe was getting excited right in front of us. He seems completely different from earlier, so I got the feeling he's not lying. What the hell is going on here? The next moment, the woman in the kimono lightly chuckled as she poured herself a third glass of sake.
なんだよ。
大したことないよ、そんなの。
え？
どういう意味ですか？
The three of us stared at the woman in the kimono, all at once. She gave us all a huge sweet grin, and then spoke.
3人ともこの村の住人じゃないからね。知らないのも無理はないか。それはね、鬼隠しって言うんだよ。
Onikakushi? As a matter of fact, I have heard that. Indeed, it is a story passed down in Hinamizawa since ancient times.
この辺りにはね、昔から人が忽然と消えることがあるんだよ。それをこの村じゃ鬼隠しって言うんだ。
でもそれっていわゆる神隠しですよね。なんで鬼隠しって言うんですか？
Towada-san timidly chimed in with a question, but the woman in the kimono didn't answer and simply smiled to herself. The silence was growing awkward, so I jumped in to provide an explanation.
この村はさ、昔鬼ヶ淵村って呼ばれてたんだ。
鬼ヶ淵？
村の名前ともなった沼の底は鬼の住んでる地獄の世界とつながっていたっていう言い伝えがあってさ、その沼は海より深いと噂され、飲み込まれればそのまま黄泉の底まで沈んでいくと伝えられる底なしの沼だった。その沼の名前が鬼ヶ淵。
それじゃあここに書いてある鬼ヶ淵っていうのは？
そう、hinamizawa村って名前に改称されたのは明治の頃。それまではこの村は鬼ヶ淵村って言われてたんだ。
Upon hearing that word, Otobe looked up at the Onikafuchi Guardians poster stuck to the wall. One day, demons emerged from the swamp one after another. Demons came overflowing from hell. The villagers believed as much, and they were absolutely terrified. The demons came forth from the swamp and attacked the villagers without mercy. The humans were powerless before the demons. The villagers were confused, frightened and at a loss for what to do. They had no choice but to flee. If things continued like that, the village would be destroyed by the demons. But just as the villagers were ready to give in, a god descended, Oyashiro-sama.
お社様ってのは慈愛に満ちた神様でさ、鬼たちは村人を襲うのをやめてその意向にひれ伏し、素直にお社様の言葉に従ったんだと。
それじゃあ鬼たちはおとなしく地獄に帰ったんですか？
そうなりゃいいんだけど、鬼にも事情があったみたいでさ。彼らは地獄を追放された鬼たちだったもんで、帰る場所なんてないとお社様に泣きついたそうだ。
Across both hell and the human world, these demons had no place to call home. And so, Orishiro-sama decreed that the demons and villagers must find the means to coexist.
お社様は鬼に人間の姿を与え、村人と共存できるように計らったんだと。その後、人と鬼の根血が進み、この村は半人半鬼の住む村になっていったんだ。
I stopped myself right there, cleared my throat, and then continued in a low voice.
で、問題はここから先なんだけどさ。
問題？
鬼は鬼でも、そいつら人食い鬼だったんだよな。
ってことは、
人食い鬼は人間の姿を与えられていても所詮鬼だ。何かのきっかけで衝動的な人狩りの本能を抑えられなくなることもある。人間と交わって血が薄まったって鬼としての本能は DNA に刷り込まれてる。だからといって村人同士で共食いするわけにはいかない。だから彼らは時期を決めて定期的に人里へ降りて。
まさか人をさらって。
Rather than reply, I simply nodded silently. Indeed, based on the story and how the story had progressed so far, it was easy to see the rest. In other words, the people who were demoned away were in fact victims of this habitual demon hunt.
さすがオカルトライターとやらは詳しいね。こっちが感心しちまうほどよく調べてあるよ。
そりゃどうも。
ま、その記者さんの言う通りさ。それが鬼隠しってやつだよ。
鬼にさらわれ食べられる。
まあそんなとこ。昔は鬼ヶ淵村の村人たちが人里に押し寄せ、哀れな生贄を無理やり力ずくでさらったなんて言われてる。
お社様はどうしたんですか？今度は仲裁してくれないんですか？
人さらいはお社様公認さ。お社様はこの村の守り神だからな。村人が平和に暮らしていければ問題なし。人と鬼が仲良く暮らすためには犠牲が出るのは仕方ないことだってお社様も割り切っていたっつうわけ。
ひどい話ですね。誰かが生きるためには多少の犠牲は仕方ないだなんて。
そうやって生贄をさらってきた夜にはその儀式として綿流しとかいうものが開かれたって話もある。綿ってのは人間の内臓のことな。まあどこまで本当かは知らないが。
As soon as I said that, I took a deep breath and looked at everyone around me.
それじゃあ乙部君の友達は鬼隠しにあって今頃は人食い鬼の生贄に。
信じられない話だが実際にそんなことがあっちゃ信じないわけにはいかねえよな。少なくとも乙部の友達は何らかの怪異に巻き込まれて消えたんだから。
ちょっと待ってくださいよ。まだ決まったわけじゃないでしょ。友達は絶対生きてますよ。
ごめんなさい。縁起でもないこと言って。
言い方がまずかったな。悪い。まだ そうと決まったわけじゃないよな。
Otobe clenched his fists, and then sat back down where he was, still possessed by the excess discord with no outlet. In doing so, he seemed to recognize the futility of his behavior, and instead focus his energy on believing in their survival.
友達ってどんなやつだったの？明日一緒に探してやるよ。
いいですよ。自分で探しますから。
よくねえよ。大事な友達なんだろ。鬼なんかに食われてたまるかよ。な。
そうよね。
Towada-san meekly chimed in with a pale look on her face, and both her arms crossed. I guess she imagined the content of our earlier conversation.
その友達と仲良かったんだろ？
ええ、まあそれはそれなりには。
However, Otobe continued looking down, trying to avoid eye contact. Come on. What happened to your enthusiasm from before?
オートベ。
はい。
どうしたんだい？顔が真っ青だよ。
いや、そんなことないですよ。
The woman scooted closer to Otobe on the tatami mat and said, "Is that so?" while giggling and pinching his cheeks.
あんた、もしかして鬼隠しにビビってんのかい？
そんなんじゃ。
そうだよね。いいっていいって。まあ仕方ないさね。こんな状況だ。怖がらない方が異常ってもんさ。すぐ近くでなくても同じ村の中に死人がいるんだから。
Those words suddenly reminded me of the suicide victims I encountered earlier. Otobe and Towada-san both looked distraught as they turned their gaze downward.
あんたさ、ちょっと不謹慎じゃねえの？こいつの友達が鬼隠しっていうか、ただちょっとはぐれてるだけだってのにさ。
そうだよね。ただちょっとはぐれてるんだよね。ねえ、乙部。
まあどっちみちここからじゃ歩いて帰るわけにもいかないしな。明日俺たちの車に乗っけてってやろうか。
いいですよ、別に。
いいってなんだよ。別に遠慮はいらねえぞ。
いや、本当に。
Otobe stubbornly refused and hung his head. Was he just being timid? Or was my kindness unwelcome?
荒川さんとやらおせっかいはよしなよ。
While I struggled to size up Otobe's true intentions, the woman in the kimono interrupted.
この村じゃ人が消えることなんてよくあること。特に騒ぐようなことじゃないのさ。さてと、すっかりごちそうになっちまったね。
The woman in the kimono showed little regard for me as she finished her glass of sake, then quickly rose to her feet. And then she slowly began walking toward the hallway.
おいあんた、ちょっと待てよ。
I scrambled to get up and chase after her.
待てってば、おい。
なんだい？
I saw the pristine white nape of her neck from her loose collar before she slowly turned back to me. The gesture looked so unexpectedly beautiful that it didn't belong in this world.
なんだいって自己紹介。まだなのはあんただけでしょうが。あんたの素性が一番気になってんのよ。
A suspicious woman in a kimono, bathed in an unreadable aura. And she spoke of being demoned away, which of course only people from Hinamizawa should know about. Who on earth is this woman? The woman let out a small sigh, then turned her eyes my way.
私の名は園崎ミオン。ここ、hinamizawa村の住人だよ。
園崎ってまさかあの園崎か。
どの園崎でもいいだろ別に。
This woman. Sonozaki-san quickly made her way down the hallway after saying that. The last name itself wasn't particularly rare, but within Hinamizawa, it took on a special connotation. So, I couldn't suppress my astonishment for having met a person like that completely by coincidence.
ミオンさんって有名な人なんですか？
有名も何も、園崎って言えばこの辺りの名家。かつてhinamizawa村を支配していた御三家の一つよ。
そんなもん昔の話さ。
って園崎さんどこへ行くんですか？
ちょいと用を済ませてくるだけだよ。
用って。
はあ、いちいちうるさい坊やだね。あたしはもともとこの神社に用があってきたんだ。あんたたちの相手をするためにここにいるんじゃないんだよ。
Sonozaki-san turned back and let out an exaggerated sigh. Then Sonozaki-san stopped at the entryway and crouched down to put on her sandals.
何？遠くへ行くわけじゃないよ。この集会所の裏にある建物に用があるのさ。
裏ってひょっとしてあれか？
If that's the case, wouldn't that be a great opportunity? With that in mind, I rushed back to the assembly room, grabbed my rucksack packed with documents, and scrambled back to the entrance. Otobe was so surprised by my movements that he jumped.
どうしたんですか？
決まってるだろ。集会所の裏って言えば西宮殿。
Not quite.
木々の道具がしまってある場所だよ。
西宮殿
だから西宮殿。この神社の神主である古出家と村のごく一部の限られたものしか開けることができないという西宮殿。そこにはこの村の秘技に使われた道具がしまってあると言われていて。
興味があるなら乙部もおいで。
Sonozaki-san was already prepared to head out, and had her hand on the door as she casually looked back to make that offer to Otobe.
僕もいいんですか？
あんたが来るくらい構わないだろ。
当然俺も行っていいんすよね。
好きにしな。
Why does she treat me so coldly? What reason does she have to treat you warmly? Then Sonozaki-san turned toward Towada-san to ask her too.
あんたも来るかい？
いえ、私はここに残ります。
Her response surprised me. Wouldn't it feel lonely staying in a place like this on your own?
彼がまだ起きないから。匠くんが起きた時、部屋に誰もいなかったらびっくりすると思うんです。それにさっきの鬼隠しの話を聞いてたら、なおさら彼をここに一人で残すことなんてできないです。ちょっと考えすぎかもしれませんけどね。
そうですか。
Towada-san gave us a sweet smile. I admired the courage behind that smile. I felt a little worried about leaving a young girl alone in such a massive assembly hall, especially a derelict shrine in an assembly hall within a ghost town. I was a bit envious of the drunken man with her, who knew nothing of her compassion. In fact, I was resentful. If I were Towada-san's boyfriend, I definitely wouldn't spend all my time in a liquor-induced coma. Wait, what am I talking about?
一人きりではないにしろ着物座った子だね。乙部、あんたも見習いな。
僕は別にビビってなんかいませんよ。
ほう、その顔のどこがビビってないんだよ。
だから別に。
Sonozaki-san turned to Otobe and started teasing him, but he did his best to respond seriously. But the two of them were just so different. Sonozaki-san pinched Otobe's cheeks. Then he immediately turned red and went quiet. Tawada-san lightly giggled to herself as she watched the two of them.
彼、もうすぐ起きると思うから。起きたら私たち、先に東京に帰りますね。
ああ、そう。じゃあ西宮殿から帰ってきたらもういないかもしれないのか。
そうですね。
それじゃあ気をつけてな。いろいろごちそうさん。
Tawada-san lightly bowed her head. Oh, so I guess that she was the one who brought the snacks and drinks.
どうも、十和田さん。
じゃあ
Sonozaki-san and Otobe made their way out of the assembly hall. I made my way to the exit, and then looked back through the doorway.
さよなら。
Tawada-san watched us all as we headed out. Aren't we supposed to be waiting for Miyuki to get back? And speaking of which, I ask once again, where is she? Shouldn't she have come back by now? After exiting the assembly hall, we pressed on through the shrine grounds. Though the rain had died down a bit, the ground was still muddy and difficult to walk on. Nevertheless, Sonozaki-san continued walking forward without making a sound. Even though the visibility was poor, she confidently stepped forward. Seriously, is this woman really from this world? As that impossible thought came to mind, I quickly glanced at Sonozaki-san. Preposterous. Something like that is completely impossible. Despite that thought, I couldn't help but feel suspicious as I gazed in awe at her skillful footwork. Just then, Sonozaki-san suddenly came to a halt.
どうしたんすか。
Sonozaki-san's piercing glare signaled me to be silent. Then I quickly glanced left and right.
いいかい。音を立てるんじゃないよ。
すみません。はい。
Sonozaki-san remained still, like she was waiting for something. I strained my ears, but I couldn't hear anything more than the rain crashing down on the mud.
行くよ。
Once again, Sonozaki-san began walking forward. But shortly thereafter, she stopped again.
園崎さん、一体どうしたんすか。
誰かいるみたいだね。近くにいるんだ。
Rain clouds blotted the entire sky, so the moonlight couldn't break through. I followed Sonozaki-san's lead and listened carefully, but I didn't hear anything particularly unusual. Maybe it's a voice only Sonozaki-san can hear?
お前、何か聞こえるか。
全然。
I started to smile with relief at Otobe's response, but just then, I heard it. Footsteps?
何かいる。
Maybe it's Miyuki.
騒ぐんじゃないって言っただろ。
すみません、すみません。
As Otobe continued apologizing, he pointed his flashlight all around. The dense trees growing around the shrine were illuminated, one after another. Good going! You might as well just put on a big glowing neon sign that says in great big glowing letters, "Hey, here we are! Notice me!" Us. Eventually, the light struck a wooden building shaped like a warehouse right in front of us. At a glance, I could tell it wasn't your typical building. It was so heavily decorated that all that stood before it would stand in awe. An impressive building.
あれが西宮殿。
Otobe waddled his flashlight left and right until the light finally caught the door of the ritual storehouse. Okay, so I guess it is the ritual storehouse. And a dark-haired figure stirred in the middle of the circle of light. Otobe must have seen the same thing. He shook the light to be sure. Eventually, the light struck a set of pale legs and a familiar pair of jeans.
Miyuki-chan?
The person in front of the ritual storehouse door was Miyuki-chan.
Ryunosuke-san?
Once she recognized us, she lightly jogged over.
よかった。車から戻ってくる途中、迷っちゃって。
迷った。
うっかりです。地図を車に置いてきたから、どっちが集会所かわかんなくなっちゃって。
You had no trouble getting to the meeting spot before without that map. Well, actually, wait, you did. You look at it once, but yeah, no, I don't believe you. Yuki-chan shrugged her shoulders and stuck out her tongue. But Sonozaki-san stared coldly at the awkwardly smiling girl.
園崎さん。
荷物は持ってこられたのかい？
ああ、はい。おかげさまで。
Yuki-chan held up a sleeping bag in a large knapsack. Mion-san took a look at the large bag, then frowned and spoke up.
ずいぶん長いこと迷ったんだね。
え？
その荷物、ずいぶん濡れてるじゃないか。
おう、そうなんです。土地勘がないとどうも容量がつかめなくて。
You really are not good at lying. Miyuki-chan was acting a little peculiar. She said she got lost. But was that the truth? It was eerie how easily she was able to lead us to the Furuji shrine. So, why would she have trouble navigating now? More importantly, the assembly hall is directly in front of the shrine gate, but the ritual storehouse is deeper back and much harder to reach. Passing by the assembly hall and getting lost back here is completely impossible. Maybe Miyuki-chan had been looking around out here the whole time, carrying the luggage? But why would she do that?
ところで、龍之介さんたちはどうして西宮殿へ？
いや、園崎さんがここに用事があるって言うから一緒についてきたんだけどさ。
すごいですね。西宮殿を見せてもらえるなんて。
Once again, my heart skipped a beat. Miyuki-chan, how did you know that this building was the ritual storehouse? The way she said she would show you implied that she knew Sonozaki-san was someone with the right to show people the ritual storehouse, doesn't it? You're finally catching on.
どうしたんですか、龍之介さん。ぼーっとして。もしかして熱があるとか。
静かに。あんた、そこちょいとどきな。
はい。
Sonozaki-san grabbed Miyuki-chan by the shoulder and pushed. In response, she rushed over to the door of the storehouse.
乙部、そこ照らしてみな。
はい。
Otobe turned his light toward the storehouse in a panic. There was a heavy padlock hanging on the door of the storehouse.
すごい鍵ですね。
ほんと、古風な鍵だよな。
For the time being, I decided to pull out my digital camera and shoot some material. But Sonozaki-san held up her hand and glared at me. Apparently she didn't want me taking photos.
仕方ない。
But just being able to witness the interior would be a godsend. I just have to commit everything inside to memory, so I can put it in the article.
でも、鍵がかかっていたんじゃ中には入れないですよね。 どうするんですか？
どいてな。
Sonozaki-san pulled a string on the long tube she was holding under her arm. And what emerged from within was a handle. The silky cloth quickly fell to the ground as Sonozaki-san grabbed the handle.
それって、園崎さん？
Perhaps it really is one of those. Then, Sonozaki-san silently pulled it out of its sheath. What emerged was a very fine sword. Illuminated by the flashlight, a dull glow reflected off the blade. Would that actually really be able to cut off that lock, though?
やっぱ日本刀。あんたどうしてそんなもんを？っていうか何するつもり？っていうか
I got so excited I didn't know what to say. At any rate, what on earth is she doing out here with such a dangerous weapon?
荒川、口を閉じてそこをどきな。
はい。
I jumped away from the door. Sonozaki-san held the katana so the tip of the blade sat directly above the padlock.
ミオンさん。
The surrounding air gathered around Sonozaki-san. Sonozaki-san closed her eyes. And in due time, they opened once again. I couldn't see it very well. Then I noticed Sonozaki-san's katana pointed toward the ground, and the padlock, split in two, still rattling on the ground. Well, I'll be. You cut it. Though all of us stood around her stunned, Sonozaki-san calmly stepped forward. And then, after taking a few steps, she casually turned back to us and spoke.
あんたたち、いつまでぼーっとしてるんだい？行くよ。
はい。
Wandering alone in a village like this in the middle of the night, wielding a katana, and intent on coming to this very place. What on earth is she? Sonozaki-san pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside the ritual storehouse, while I stood there lost in my doubts. Well, besides all the different torture tools and other such things, I wonder what we'll find inside. Guess we'll find out next time, because this has been going on for about 2 hours now, and I kind of want to stop now. So, yeah, well, I guess we'll see whatever. I guess we'll see if there's anything worth investigating inside the ritual storehouse in the next episode. But once again, I'm more interested in whatever the hell Miyuki's deal is, because she's clearly the most suspicious person out of everybody here so far, without question, at this point. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will see you all next time. Take care.